Welcome everyone to Hard Talk, coming to you from Kota Kinabalu in Malaysia. There's one particular section of it which is called MindFLOW Ergonomics. But remember that Hard Talk is about conversations. It's not an interview. And I enjoy it because I share my heart with my guest and I hear his heart too, or her heart. And, the whole world is crying out for solutions. I've been working 40 years in the marketplace, and everywhere I go, it's about solutions, solutions, solutions. And they're all looking for solutions for a better life. So life is a reflection of intent. These are the words, said by Jonathan Lockwood Huey. But intention involves decision. And all through our lives, we are always called to make the right decision. How do we make right choices? How do we make sense of our choices? And for me, when you talk about MindFLOW Ergonomics, I talk about 7 zones, and these are really pause buttons that we can actually build and develop, designed for us to take a pause. Because the unexamined life is not worth living. And if we can pause at every point in our lives and make the right responses, so that we can make the right choices, we will have a better life and outcome at the end. So this is something that I have struggled with all through my life, and I'm sure that you have some struggles too. It can be confusing. But if we look through the lens of optimism, and that is hoping for a future, being confident about the future, thinking about the future and me, how does it look like, what is it going to be like? It's all about vision. And I'm a big believer in visioneering, because at all steps along our life, we're talking about vision. And I'm always guided by, one of the most beautiful books I've read, which is actually called Transitions, Making Sense of Life's Changes. And every time that there is a change to be done, it's fantastic if you can look at it through a lens of optimism. So my guest today is a number one when it comes to living the optimized life. I love his lenses, and I wish I can wear them all the time, because if all of us have that, we'll have a better life before us, and we'll make a much more better sense of impact. And his name is Eric Ayers. I hope I got the surname spelling right. And I'm going to read off something that I have here and how I met him, how I met Eric. Now, Eric is an optimist. He's a thought leader with a passion for inspiring all to reach an understanding of personal potential. I think that's the crux of life, isn't it? To live to your fullest potential. And he helps us find balance within ourselves, within our team, within our relationships, within our families, the balanced life. What does it look like? And that's what we're going to learn today. And becoming your best self is a journey that impacts humanity. Now, this is a man who wants to make an impact not only in his own life, but within his sphere of influence, and at the same time making that triple in the community that he's surrounded with, in his sphere of influence. So let's just jump right in and welcome Eric to join us. So Eric, welcome.
Thank you so much. I can feel the energy of this, and I'm super excited to be here.
No, listen. I mean, now did I get your surname right? How do you pronounce it? Ayers?
Ayers, you said it perfect. You said it better than I do.
There you go. I mean, we are in different ends of the world. You're in Tennessee, USA.
Correct.
And I'm in Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia. It's 9:04 a.m. in the morning. And what's your time?
It's 8:04 p.m.
8:04. So you've gone back 1 hour now.
Yep. Yeah, oh. With the whole time change over the last couple of weeks, it's hard to keep up with it.
I can imagine. Eric, having worked in the marketplace 40 years now, and yourself too exposed in the health, sector and environment. I mean, it's not a single day that goes by without someone coming up or using these words, good morning, and to somebody else, good afternoon or good night. And we all hope that the day turns out good. Nobody goes to work with the impression of have a lousy morning, and,
right.
And that is the perspective of what we bring to ourselves and to the place that we are in. It's always supposed to be good. And I've always wondered why life has knocked me down so many times. And I feel that, and I want to quote from your words in one of your podcasts, which I enjoyed very much with Mass. I thought it was brilliant. And he's having a session with me next week. But you said these words, and you said this. You said there are no failures. If there is a failure, it is because we gave it permission to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I stood there and I said, now, I have never given permission for myself to fail. And I don't know what the heck has happened that I've, gone round the rabbit hole so many times. And who on earth gave me the permission to do that? So, with a man of experience like yourself, shifting perspectives is all about life.
Mm-hmm.
Having the right perspective, putting on the right lenses. Who wants to fail? Nobody. But we end up doing it all the time. It's like a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And they always say, oh, failures are the stepping stones to success. But look, I mean, if I can count my failures, I probably still be on the wrong lane, So let's start from there. As a coach, as a man of transformational thinking, human design thinking, we'll go into all that later. But I want to start with the concept of failure first, because that's why people are crying out. They're crying out for solutions. Somewhere along their life, there's a failure. Can we start there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when I think of this concept, I think of the bicycle analogy, because everyone who begins to ride a bicycle fails. Initially, it's a failure. You are going to fall. It is inevitable. If you give yourself permission to believe that this is the end outcome is this failure, you will never learn how to ride a bike. But if you say, I'm going to take the next step because now I know a set of circumstances of what not to do, now you are building upon this understanding of learning. So ultimately, that's how failure becomes a stepping stone to success. So that's the toddler approach, the bare minimum understanding of how failure works in our favor.
Right.
Through ultimately tenacity. And ultimately, if I say I want to learn how to ride a bicycle, I have a vision of me riding the bicycle. I'm going to ride the bicycle one day. It's going to take work, and it's going to take me putting forth effort and forgiving myself for each time that I don't actually ride the bike. And then one day I'm riding the bicycle. And that to me is the understanding and the example of everything we do in life.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's like, when we talk about the times when we were in college and growing up, and and we all want to kind of be successful, and at the end of the day, I remember, I mean, I've grown up with a lot of scars in my life, and those scars have become so tightened they've ended up on contractures, and if people say, well, just leave the past alone and just look forward and all that, and I say no. That's not what it is, because in my field as a plastic surgeon, I'm always dealing with scar contractures, and you have to really do surgery to release those scars, and then take a skin graft and patch it in. And I think that a lot of people are struggling because they're trapped into their past, see, and we don't know how to let go of it. So how do you approach that as a coach? I mean, somebody comes up and gives you a call and says, Eric, help. I've had a horrible past and all that. How do you approach it, Eric? Give us the real feel of it.
Yeah. The past is an interesting concept because it's no longer our state of being. However, we go back to it and recreate it continuously when we're in these perpetual states. So the beauty of our human body is we have this innate ability to call upon our internal pharmacy system. So when we need medicine, we can get that. Part of that is if I need to outrun this tiger, I'm going to get some this chemical cocktail, I call it, released to help me run. I'm probably not going to outrun the tiger, but I'm going to give it my all, right? So this in our state of being in our current times, chances are I'm not going to be running from a tiger, but I'm going to be confronted with something that reminds me of the past. Maybe
Yes.
someone says something that reminds me, and all of a sudden I have this same reaction. It's the same chemicals that are having this cortisol release. That is, I have adrenaline flowing. If I can take 1 minute and breathe, after that minute, those chemicals are gone. They are no longer driving my emotion, my energy and motion, which when I'm relying on these chemicals is going in a direction that is reacting to a situation, not where I want to go, but where my amygdala is saying, you need to be safe, go. Right. So if you take this into the concept of past, what we are actually doing is recreating events over and over and over simply by a thought. We have a thought, and all of a sudden we have this chemical cocktail release that is keeping us in this past. So it's inhibiting our ability, like you said, to let go. So, first of all, we need to understand that the past happened, and the reason why it did is because it had to happen for whatever reason to get us to where we are now. But the only thing we have is right now. So instead of facing backwards and saying, this happened, what do you want to happen tomorrow? Because your current self is the direct manifestation of your past self. And if we want a better future, then right now we are manifesting the next self, our tomorrow, our next week, our 3 years from now self. So ultimately, it's starting with that understanding of we are anchoring ourselves in the past because we continue to think about it. And we can't change future. We can't change anything about our situation until we acknowledge that this no longer serves us. This is useless energy. It's like in Power versus Force. David Hawkins recognized that grief, and there's another emotion that is, I'll think of it in a minute. It's the only thing it does is keep us anchored down in our inability to move beyond a current situation.
Powerful.
And so it starts with that. It starts with uncovering and getting the client, the person that's human who is stuck having this same, it's like they're reliving this moment over and over and over and over and over, getting them to recognize that they have the power if they let go. And right now, their power is being placed in the past. And it's hard. It's very difficult. And once you get that seed planted, then you're able to blossom into something that is more beneficial, more life-giving. And then it's like breathing life into that.
No, I mean, that's powerful, Eric. Thank you for that. I mean, it's like I talked about releasing that scar contracture. You're left with a raw area, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a skin graft from the same body. So that's why I said, the body is the most beautiful pharmacy in the whole world. You don't have to go and do a graft from the outside, but you take an autograft and you just put a skin graft on it, and there you go. So I hear you loud, because hope is the currency of the future in the present.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also blind hope.
There is.
And blind hope is willful ignorance of our past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you have now acknowledged as a coach, as a transformationalist, that we've got to take that past, but we've got to make good use of it so that it doesn't suck our energy away, but makes us even more brighter for tomorrow. And I think that's a very powerful way to live that optimistic life, looking ahead with confidence, knowing that it'll be okay. We'll do okay.
Right.
And I think, I mean, it's amazing how life sorts itself out in some way if you know where to look.
Absolutely. Because you find what you look for, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
knowing where to look is it's key. It's huge.
And yeah, I mean, I want to thank you for that. You know, I've struggled with these two words, Eric, because every time I read it or hear it, I just push it aside because what the heck are these people talking about? I've always talked about this fixed mindset that doctors have, We just go to
Yeah.
work and come back, and that's all that's bothered about life.
Yeah.
But I have struggled with these two words, positive thinking. All right. Nobody wants to think negatively, all right? But this is positive thinking. And I think
Mhm.
it's about outcomes, isn't it? At the end of the day. And that's why when you
Absolutely.
mention about reactions, I'm a big believer about responses because this famous quote and is attributed to Viktor Frankl, who said that between a stimulus and a response is that space.
Yes.
And I found myself in that space, Eric. All of us get lost out in outer space until we come into this inner space where we find mindfulness, where we find intention, where we find a potential of, living that full life that you talk about. And I
Mhm.
believe so. And I think that the more we stop and pause and make a right response, you will find that the ultimate result is a better choice because the reaction is so immediate, so sudden, and I've suffered from that because it's a trigger with a gun loaded, and before you know it, the damage has been done.
Right.
And I think that's fantastic. But now, I want to just shift gears now. I mean, you're a man who has worked in the healthcare, and
Correct.
we've been in a pediatric hospital. And I'm supposed to operate on a cleft child tomorrow morning, who is about 3 months old, and I've seen some of them now who are now 20 years in college. Now, why did you choose that particular zone, if I can put it? Because, I mean, my son is a pediatrician.
Yeah.
But the reason is I watched him and the way he handles children, but most important, the way he handles the parents.
Yeah.
And and I thought that was a zone I'll never go in because of my character and my type. You just want to
Right.
cut and get it over with, that sort of thing. And if the
Right.
child is screaming, stop crying. that kind of- Now, tell me, because it is in that zone that you actually burnt out.
Mhm. Yes.
So help us to get into there.
Yeah. And when I first went into it, I had no idea the dynamics of the family.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, it's oh, I get to take care of pediatrics. Pediatrics is so life giving. Kids bounce back so quick. They also crash really quick, but they bounce back so quick, and it's fun. Like they are. It's what we seek to be. We're always seeking to be the childlike, um, like the 5-year old inside of all of us. Like that is what is wanting to come out, and it's so fun to have 12 hours of literal fun that you can have with patients, and I mean for like uh Halloween and other times we get to dress up and we get to interact and we get to be kids ourselves. So that was the fun part, and I always wanted to help people. And I know as a high schooler, I had a thought. It lasted about a minute of being a doctor, and I was like, I don't want to go to school that long. So it was like, I want to be a nurse. I want to help people, and that was the introduction. And as I'm doing clinicals, I fell in love with pediatrics. It was like, this is what I want to do. I love emergency medicine. I love the adrenaline rush. That these are all the things that are like, this is what I need to do. And then when you start doing it, it no longer becomes, or let me rephrase that, I allowed it to no longer become the focus on how I serve, but rather now it's a job. Now it's a factory style of, these are the things I have to do.
Right.
Like I get orders, I do check, 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 done that, on to the next one. And it's like this robotic system, and the humanity part like disappeared. And that's where burnout started coming in. And I had no idea this was going on. This was from hours and weeks and years of self-reflecting and diving deep into healing after the fact. But during this is what I came up with, is it was disconnecting from humanity. And part of what I did, and I think a lot of healthcare people, healthcare workers, especially in acute care settings and even OR, is we disassociate ourselves from the emotions that are involved. So if and I prided myself on this for a while, of being able to detach myself emotionally from a difficult situation of a patient dying, or a really difficult diagnosis that, hit us as humans. But when it doesn't bother you, you're like, okay, I can go on with life. But what I didn't realize was you can't turn it on and off. If you disassociate and detach yourself from emotions in one aspect of your life, you're not going to be able to feel in any aspect of your life. And that's what happened, was the inability to feel and exhibit emotions. And I started becoming angry. And turns out I was not angry. I was actually really, really sad. And the sadness was the emotion I was feeling, and the anger was what I allowed to come out. It was not able to hold that sadness anymore. It just came out as anger. And that's where I found myself about 10 years into bedside nursing.
Right, right. Because I think that's an inflection point where you reach a stage and you say that enough is enough, you know.
Mhm.
And I've been through it. I've dived into it. I've tried to come out of it, and you find that your work sort of, just takes the better half of you.
Mhm.
And 12 years ago, I realized I had to go for open heart surgery because I had nobody to tell me and look inside and say, "Hey, you're decaying inside.
Right.
You're rotting up. Your pipes are closing up."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And suddenly you're standing at death's door, and you wonder what the hell happened. But
Yeah.
this is why people like yourself, Eric, it's a gem in society to have folks like you who can really give an inside look, a lens to put on to see
Yeah.
our inner self first and recognize it. Because the man in the mirror that Michael Jackson sings about
Mhm.
is sometimes because mirrors don't lie.
No,
And
no, they
shadows
don't.
never leave you. You sometimes you're
Yeah.
walking and you like to tell your shadow, just get out of the way. That's not me with the pop belly, what you don't like you don't like your shadows, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
reality, it's like how did that affect you? I mean, for me,
Mm.
um, when I started burning out was, of course, everybody has a story, but I was giving so much of myself outwards that I never stopped to look inwards,
Yeah.
and that was tragic for me. But so when you do your coaching, I mean, what's the normal, what's the average most wanting cry out that they reach out to you?
It's mostly feeling stuck. So it's like this burning desire of wanting or needing to be more, and not knowing how to get there, or not knowing if this is even available to them. And it's interesting because that was exactly the clients who come out, who reach out to me, are exhibiting very similar situations that I was in. And I think so, the saying is, hurt people hurt people. Yes, but healed people heal people. And it's that commonality of when we're able to go through processes and go through these quote unquote failures, that we overcome and become a different person, because I became a totally different person. That attracts people, and they know there's something innate within us that can help. And I think that's the beauty of it. To your point, yes, the mirror is what what snapped me into, wait a minute, something's not right. Because I was like, who are you? Looked in the mirror, I was like, I don't even know who you are. Overweight, out of shape, you know, this angry person. And that was the first moment that I was like, this is not right. This is out of alignment. This is not, this is imbalanced. And so the imbalance, the not living in an alignment, that's where clients find me, is when they're in that state.
Oh, that's powerful because they find you, and that's a bit the best resource in life is to find someone who's able to kind of fill up the tank,
Yeah, yeah,
and help you get
yeah,
aligned yourself.
yeah,
It's like driving a car. When I take my car for alignment, the guy puts it on a kind of a wheel thing, and then he takes a small plug and hits it onto the wheel to
yeah,
balance the whole thing, and it's much of life is like that, and getting into alignment. Um,
yeah. I,
and
t- I wrote a blog once that was life is more balanced with two shoes. And it's all about, if you take one shoe off, you're walking like this, right?
yeah.
And it's sometimes it's the simple, and it's not simple. It's not simple in application, but it's simple to identify. This is the imbalance. Changes this one area, and everything else starts to flow. And when we are in this state of imbalance, we sometimes have our blinders on and we don't see. So as a coach, I can see your blind spot, and I can lovingly and supportingly help you see that and help navigate to how to shift your thoughts into balance and alignment.
Oh, that's powerful, and that's a gift. But you would have to have gone through it yourself in your own life to be able to see somebody else's blind spot.
Right.
Because how often do we drive and look in the rear mirror because you whack the
Yep.
the car in the
Mhm.
front? You know what I mean? And talking about different perspectives, as what you were saying. Um, where do you go to refuel your tank?
It's a very good question. Most of the time, I refuel by having a conversation with my wife.
Yeah, you're
And
lucky, man. You're lucky. I tell you what, I just wish you had a twin sister, man. Yeah.
we have, I mean, we've been together for 20 plus years. We've been married for 20 years, been together for 23. And from the moment we started dating, that's what attracted me to her, was the ability to converse at such a deep level that when we come out of this, we feel better. So that I love to read, which this happened after I became the new me. I used to not like to read, and now I love it. And then, but I love studying human behavior and human design and ways that I can support others. And once I learn something about me, it's like, oh my gosh, now I can put this into application. And that's what fuels my passion and my desire, is this learning and putting it into a systems approach, as you talk about building systems of not just a band-aid to put, to temporarily fix this, but to actually fix. So that's where I go within. And a lot of times I do that after reading. I will go within, and I also writing came back into my life, through this shift in the
Yeah.
in the hospital. And writing, if I'm ever out of alignment, all I have to do is start writing, and now I'm back into where I need to be, back into optimism, and here we are.
Yeah. That's a powerful point of going to, isn't it? And that is your go-to is
Yeah,
when you put it all down in paper, and then you start reading it and you realize that hey, there's much more to live for. But
for sure.
but
That and going out into nature, if
yeah,
if it's going out into nature and actually speaking. So instead of physically writing, sometimes I will go on hikes, and sometimes my dog will go with me, and he'll look at me like I'm crazy because I'm talking, and
yeah.
I'm speaking this into Mother Earth, and into the spiritual being of who I am,
Yeah,
and
well,
reconnecting.
this is a beautiful gate to enter now because I go out, I go for walks, and we are by the sea here, and one of the most beautiful sunsets you can see here, and I will welcome you to come and visit us with your wife to Kota Kinabalu. And in the 7 zones that I talk about, life from 7 zones, One of them is a zone of resplendence, the dazzling moment, the beauty that absorbs you, the majesty of just the beauty itself, and when radiance becomes personal. Like when I see women here who come and see me and they want a makeover of their face or whatever, and I've never succeeded until it becomes personal. That radiance in them becomes personal, and then I know that okay, we are there.
Yeah.
And so that's my go-to zone for me to feel, and that is resplendence, and you can watch that sunset and the waves come in and bring all your problems, but the good thing is the waves go back. And so, into an ocean, they stay there. The problems never go away. And so this is why the whole concept of, I want to shift now to this point in life for you, where you're able to give more of yourself to others now, because you found that you're good enough to do so. And I realized that, it's a point where it's very seldom one reaches where you say, I'm good enough, that I can start, helping somebody else walk the line when I'm still struggling. So talk to me about this whole concept that I am enough and we are enough that you brought up, that Ubuntu. Is that right? Is that how you pronounce it?
That is perfect. Yes. Yes. You pronounce these way better than I do.
Well, that's because I've been studying you.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Now listen, I want to, people, we are so westernized in our thinking and orientation that everything on the YouTube, 98% is from the Western world. And we forget that the Eastern or the Asian world, there's so much to live and learn from. And I talk about smart aging. There must be smart partnership. There must be an art in smart. SMART. There's an art in it to be smart, And
Right.
So give us a window, because before you bring me this Ubuntu, one of my Hard Talk guests is a guy called Taufik Ismail, who's the son of one of the deputy prime ministers of this country. And in my conversation with him, and this will excite you before you bring me on to your side, was that we were talking about a nation that is fractured. And many of us live fractured lives. And I talk about all this community fracture, and it comes out into the wound and all kinds of things. So this nation is really fractured. And he came up and he said, Charles, have you heard of Kintsugi? Have you heard that, Eric?
I have.
And he said, it's a Japanese art of repairing broken pottery using gold. And then I realized that what a beautiful piece. Instead of hiding when someone is broken, come out into the open and use some form of lacquer and mold yourself and heal. And I thought that was beautiful, that all these cultures have aspects of healing that can bring humanity in its better place, you see. So let's have talk to us about this, because I mean, it's fantastic, yeah.
Ubuntu came to me at a time when, my story, that when I saw myself in the mirror and was like, who are you? My wife caught me on the way out the door and gave me a hug, said, I love you. Tonight, look for something good. And it was crazy to me. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't want to go to work, but I'll look for something good. That night completely shifted everything. It shifted the trajectory of the rest of my life. And granted, there were so many things that happened up before then. This was the turning point. This was the highlighted moment to where my physical body can say, this was what changed. There's a lot of things that changed. This was the highlight. I met a 4-year-old little girl that night, and she gave me something, this emotion that I did not recognize. I knew it was good, right? And turns out this was love. And I was like, okay, so this made me want to keep looking for things that are good. And so I'm going through this journey, and now I'm shifting from trying to climb this hierarchical ladder in the hospital to helping people shift perspectives, showing them optimism, showing them the other side of the coin, the perspectives. And Then I'm learning leadership, and the concept of Ubuntu entered my life. And it has been so profound because it continues to scale in my being. So there's kind of three stages to it in my evolution of Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu roughly translates to I am because we are. And if you say it, it sounds like something really cool to say. But when you study it, it's I am who I am. Eric is Eric, because every single person, every single event, every single thing that I have been through, good, bad, happy, sad, it doesn't matter, but every person has fed into my being because I am, because we are. And I was like, wait a minute, there's something to this. And I couldn't quite grab the complexity of it. And then I was introduced to a story, and these Ubuntu cultures, these tribes, which, live with about 120 people in the tribes, because that's, it's no coincidence that we remember about 120 names, because we're tribal beings and we're meant to live in groups or cultures of about 120. So if someone in the community in this tribe would mess up or do something,
are they still around this tribe?
There's a few tribes in South Africa that so it's not just one tribe. It's these tribal cultures, and so if one person makes a mistake, for example, before going into that, if I make a mistake, you do not have to tell me that I made a mistake, that I did bad. You don't have to tell me anything about that, because I'm already beating myself up as oh man, I messed up, and I'm already working through, how do I fix this? How do I move on? If I have a manager come to me and telling me how bad I did and beating me up even more than I am, we're compounding this down and I'm getting smaller and smaller, right? Well, this is what blew my mind, is these cultures, these Ubuntu cultures, they will take the person who made a mistake, put them in the middle of the group, and everyone will take turns telling them the value that they bring to them personally and to their culture. So it's a total opposite of what we do. And in Western world of business, of instead of me telling you the things that you did bad, I'm going to tell you the amazing things that you do. And out of the 100 things that you try, 99 of them are right. And you just mess up once or a handful of times. And it's all about building people up, because because even though you mess up, I am because of you are. You could be the baker, you could be the doctor of the tribe, and you made a mistake, but like, I can't do my job without you. And likewise, you can't do it without me. And so it's building up. The next story of Ubuntu took it even farther in terms of, and Ubuntu is a way of life. It's a culture. It's just a way of being. And this anthropologist was with these group of kids in one of the South African tribes, and he said, we're going to do an experiment. When I count to 3, all of you are going to race to the tree. Whoever wins, whoever gets there first, gets this basket of oranges. So he said 1, 2, 3. All of them lined up, held hands, and walked, and they all finished together, and they shared the oranges. The anthropologist said, why didn't one of you try to win? You could have had all the oranges. And they said, what good is it for me to win if everyone else loses? Ubuntu. And it's like, if I win, that's my ego. But if we win, we're all built up, and think of what we can do together, as opposed to out of the 10, one person is elevated and the other 9 are made to feel small. So those were the two concepts that blew my mind in terms of, maybe we're looking at humanity all wrong. And that was kind of the seed into this enhancing humanity through mindset and shifting perspectives mentality.
Oh, powerful, powerful. I mean, this is a this is a game changer. I mean, this is revolutionary.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm saying so is because, you know, we are all spiritual beings, as you said just now,
Yes.
and I believe that that's so important because, you know, in the marketplace we all talk about work-life balance, and I've always said that when you talk about work-life balance, there's no balance. That's a plank. All right. When I do my
Correct.
exercises, you know, when I do exercises, doc, get into that plank. I said, damn, it's strengthening your core. You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but work life, there's a balance because there must be a fulcrum in the center, and that's the spirit man.
Hmm.
And if you don't feed your spirit man, you'll forever be in a plank position. Now, this whole spiritual concept of I am who I am is exactly goes back to the ancient scriptures in
Yes.
Exodus, you know, in chapter 3 and verse 14.
Mhm.
Moses is standing there, you know, representing his people. And then and God says, I'm going to bring you out from misery, which a lot of us are in, into a promised land. And he says, go tell your people, I am who I am,
Mhm.
and that I'm all sufficient. I'm self-sufficient. He gives them, you know, everything about existence, and all that you want is in me. And that was the binding factor that the people came together and looked up and said there's someone else who's going to be their deliverer.
Mhm.
And I think this whole concept of I am who I am has got its you know, infinite capacity. It's transcendent in thinking that each of us is a nation, you know.
Mhm.
And I always
Mhm.
think of you know, when we're talking about Jacob and Esau, and and when Rebecca was pregnant, you know, God said
Yeah.
there are two nations in there.
Mhm.
And so imagine that if each of us are so full of this concept that we are more than enough, we are more
Mhm.
than conquerors. What an impact we can make with one another.
Absolutely.
But the source comes from the other higher being that is able to fill us in. So I want to congratulate you on that, because on one aspect you got this Ubuntu, which talks about a tribal capacity to its fullest potential. And
Mhm.
on the other side, you got Kintsugi that comes and
Yeah.
and brings back broken pieces, so, you know, and molds them together using gold. You know, we are all you know,
Yeah.
a powerful time to be alive, man, Eric.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And as you're talking about that, I'm also thinking of the scripture of the potter who, you know, if something breaks on the pottery, you just break the whole thing and you remold
Remold.
it. You remold it into what you need it to be, and that is powerful because that's what we have the ability to do
Yeah.
all the time.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like they're getting into the potter's house, you know.
Mhm.
You can get a piece of clay, you can make a beautiful vase, or you can make one that's so deformed that you know,
Yeah.
it's all in your hands, isn't it? And you know, it's nice to be in Eric's house, you know.
Absolutely. I like that. I'm going to
And
steal that.
yeah, right, you know. But I want to go in now, and as we come to you know, towards the end of our conversation about human design.
Mhm.
I mean, we are all created in the image of a creator, God, perfectly.
Mhm.
We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And our whole aspect, I mean, he made everything in this world beautiful. The question is, what have we done with it? What have I done with my life? I'm 72 yesterday. And when I look back, and my children are the best testimonies of how far I've come down instead of up, you know. You know, it's been a hell of a walk. But you know,
Yeah.
Eric, um, talk to us about this whole insight of your concept of the human design. Because as a surgeon myself, and creativity is part of my DNA, to be able to take a lip that is totally deformed in birth and put it right so that they will be able to live that better life for
Mhm.
themselves. We were all designed for excellence.
Mhm.
What went wrong?
We believed, I think it's one of two things. We believe the voices of someone else,
Right.
or we refuse to believe the power that we had or have. And So like you said, so human design consists of the dichotomy of each of us. It's the physical and the spiritual. And ultimately, how do they live in union together in a way that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, right? So,
Absolutely.
but we shift that and we overtake it in ego. And I love Wayne Dyer's definition of ego is edging God out, ego. So
Right.
ultimately, that's what it is. So
So
when the
true, isn't it?
ego, absolutely. So when we're trying to be physical and drive, physical domination, and kind of put the spirit on the back burner, that's when burnout happens. That's when health issues happen. That's when all the things that we don't want happen, because spirit is all about expansion. We're always seeking further expansion and to learn, grow, expand. Well, our physical form can only follow what our spiritual form allows, right? So ultimately, that's what human design is. And without going into detail, it's the union of the power that we have from the physical, our physical 3D body and our spirit. And we all have this flow of energy within us, and it's super interesting. For example, so my design is a generator, so I generate, and this automatically allows me to have an open aura. So we all have this electromagnetic field in us or around us. I am able to coach and help people and bring um, these situations, these people to me through my open aura and this magnetic ability. So, and what helped me more than anything was identifying that my strategy is to respond. So I'm not a person who makes a decision like that. Which is interesting because my story was filled with making decisions on the spot.
There
And
you
I
go.
was creating fight or flight all the time, and my body does not respond to that. My body is not created for that. It's created to feel something and think about that, feel it, go through that, and then respond to that. And when I do that, I'm in alignment. And when I notice I'm frustrated, that's my cue to stop, breathe, and say, how can I shift from frustration to satisfaction? And it sounds very little, it sounds very small, but that small aspect allows me to ebb and flow with my design instead of fighting against that.
Powerful, powerful. Because I mean, you were designed to respond. I was designed to react.
Mhm.
And all my life has been a trigger happy kind of reaction that caused more damage and wounds than I can ever think of.
Yeah.
And my children would be the best testimony of that. But I love this whole concept of frustration and then turning to satisfaction. And I lived with fear, my greatest fear in my whole life, because I was always running away from it,
Yeah.
running away from something. And that is because my greatest fear was to become like my father. And so I was always running away from that fear until I had a calling and a vision given to me by God, a vision of life. And so
Mhm.
that killed the fear because I realized there was a greater purpose, a greater calling. And I found myself in Him, you see. So a
Yeah.
lot of us have got this dual life kind of running away from something, but running to what? And that's where vision comes in,
Absolutely.
isn't it? I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
um, yeah.
And to add to that a little bit, if I may, this was profound in my life. And you touched on this at the beginning of our conversation. The good morning, the good evening, the
Yeah.
good day. There's a thing in, at least in the Western world, when you say, "Hey, good morning, how are you?" The response is very interesting, And most of the time it's, oh, it's not bad for a Monday, or I'm doing okay, or glad it's Friday. It's very seldom is, oh, I am amazing, I am doing so well. But this is a fascinating thing. We speak things into existence. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Amen.
We were given the Word. We are creators. That's what we are. We are creative beings. We're always creating. That's why we have curiosity. That's why we have our imagination. So I shifted. So when I didn't recognize myself in the mirror, I was misdiagnosed with something. The story goes a lot longer, a lot deeper. But this misdiagnosis ran me through all of Western medicine. And I was introduced to Eastern medicine. I was introduced to meditation. I was introduced to other ways of me to go within. And one thing that I decided to do was, when someone said, "How are you?" I said, "I am well." And I said it every single time, and I still say it. And I did not believe myself. I was like, I said it, and I'm having GI issues, and I'm like, oh, I'm well, and I'm cramping. And then one day I was well. And that was the first time that I realized the power in our words, and how we have the ability to either find what we're looking for or find what we don't want, because either way we're going to find it. So if we're continuously running from something, we're going to find the thing that we're running from, because that's our focus. And our mind is going to open up opportunities for us to have more of those running from experiences, as opposed to, this is what I want. And it's like, okay, it's almost like when you say, oh, I'm going to get this red car. The next week, all you see is this red car everywhere you look. It's the power of persuasion, and it's God's way of aligning us to what we want. And that was huge, and it's still huge. And I still find myself in the crux of, no, I'm focusing on what I don't want instead of what I do want.
Well, thanks, Coach, because
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Because this is a healing podcast this morning. You know what I mean?
For
And
sure.
I mean, having gone through so much in my own life, when people ask me, "How are you, doc?" and I say, "Better than I deserve."
Mhm.
And because
But you
if God
deserve
put,
greatness. You deserve
yeah, if
greatness,
he puts his
right?
hand on me, I'm finished. That kind of thing. It's grace every day. But Eric, this is the beauty of life, when two minds meet
Mhm.
and share how much there is deep within, because the spirit is always looking for the deep things of God. It's
Yes.
no more out there in the world, or it's not about experience, it's about going deep.
Mhm.
And I think this is the beauty of life, because there's so much inside of us that we are afraid that the light will shine on. And I think the more light that comes in, the more you realize what's in the closet that doesn't
Mhm.
need to be there. And I just want to ask you, I mean, where does your spiritual strength come from? I mean, because to me, that's my greatest anchor. Recently, 2 years ago, I did the Asia Pacific consultation on marketplace mindfulness. And I created and formed that because I was in this space by myself for 2 years. I left my home, and I was totally burnt out because I just finished putting my daughter through 5 years of dental school, which cost me like 1.5 million Malaysian ringgit. And I used to work and operate, and every day I'll earn a little bit and go and put it in the bank and send it and put it in the bank. It went on for 5 years, until when she finished just before COVID, I gave up my ghost. I mean, I said, that's it. It was like Christ on the cross. It is finished. That
It
kind
is.
of that kind
Yeah.
of feeling. And then I realized, when it was finished, I was empty inside. I was
Yeah.
totally gone. I didn't know what life was all about. So I decided to go stay on my own. And I created this whole and got 15 speakers from around the world to talk about mindfulness. When God says
Mhm.
he's mindful of us, who are we that we are mindful of him? That kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so I want to end up this whole conversation, because a lot of people think they can do things in their own strength. But at the end of the day, for me, and I'm sure also for you, the spirit man ultimately is what keeps us alive.
Mhm.
And I just feel that. So talk to us about your strength. I mean, where does spirituality come into your whole human design? Where God took a mud ball and breathed into it and created Adam,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Eric, let me just put this to you. So I was the only first Malaysian plastic surgeon to do ear reconstruction. All right.
Hmm.
I went to Palo Alto
Okay.
in California, and there was a guy called Bert Brent who is a master of ear reconstruction, and he takes the rib and he sits down and he carves the rib into the whole framework of the ear cartilage. And so I went and stayed with him, and for 3 weeks I was there to learn this whole art. And every time I read the scriptures, when God took out the rib from Adam, and then it
Yeah.
says he covered it with flesh. And I thought, there's no plastic surgeon like God, man.
Right. Right.
He just covered it, with flesh. Where does your spiritual strength comes from? Let's end there, because all greatness and goodness goes to God himself ultimately.
Mhm. Mhm.
When the rabbis came up to Jesus and he said, something about where's God or who's good, and he pointed up to God, and the Father is good, good teacher,
Yeah.
So yeah, so let's end there. Where's your spiritual strength come from for you to dig deep?
It is a beautiful question. And as you were framing the question, the word and the feeling of passion was huge within me, because we all have a purpose. We all have multiple purpose. I think at our core, at the basic element of who we are, it is to connect to other human beings. We are meant to be with other humans. We are meant to grow and to learn with and from other humans. So sometimes my spirit is fulfilled and rejuvenated when I'm with people.
Right,
Sometimes that deplenishes me, right? And
right.
when I feel deplenished, it's back to, okay, where am I? What am I doing? What is my purpose? What is my passion? And ultimately, this is interesting. I learned this from Louise Hay, who is she was a beautiful human being. She talked about our 5-year-old self, and so identifying with your 5-year-old self, because that was the part of us that was uninhibited by the rest of the world. It didn't care. It had no strings attached to anything. It was the true essence of who we are. And so tapping into that, but ultimately, God created us to have experiences, different experiences, but to help one another, to be an extension of that spirit of God. And that's what Christ taught the whole time was, that's what we're here to do. We're here to, and he even said, you too will do even greater things than I did.
That's right.
Well, how does that happen if we live in a state of fear and inadequacy? And so ultimately it comes back to, I am more than, I am plenty enough. I am enough. And the passion that I have for whatever that is, if it's for this week, if it's simply and most profoundly to be, I'm going to make lunch for my wife and our daughter. If it's simply that, then I've served, right? I've done my job. When I look at this as a chore, I'm no longer serving. So, and I say this because because I'm coaching myself right now, because
Right.
this is this is the one thing that I enjoy doing. I enjoy helping set people up for success. So setting their day up for success, making their lunch. That's life giving. That is spiritually giving for me, until I look at it as all the things that Eric needs to do, and this is in the way. This is no longer spirit. This is ego. So serving from a place of, this is my purpose and this is my passion, and think of the life this is giving in the others. That's filling. The other part is reading and exploring, because I find these synchronicities all the time, and I will hear the same name, the same author, like 3 or 4 different times, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should check them out. And it's profound. um And last but not least, Power versus Force is one of the greatest books I've ever read. And it helps me understand that on a spiritual level, we have energy that we get to choose how we are going to experience different situations. And we have the ability, if we exhibit love and we choose to be love, then we match the frequency of love. And therefore, that's what's coming back to us. And there's not a whole lot greater feelings than to be loved and accepted and appreciated, right? The
Yeah.
most basic, what every human wants, to be seen, heard, and valued. And you do that when you are able to offer that to yourself.
Wow, that's a beautiful place of resplendence to end. And that is,
Yes.
the want, the intention. I began our conversation with these two words, intention and mindfulness. Intention being involving making decisions in life. My intent is to be able to serve, and my intent is to be a blessing to others. And what a beautiful place it'll take us with that kind of thinking. So on that note, Eric, it's been a powerful 1 year, 1 hour rather. It sounded like a 1 year, but,
Yeah.
but it's been an hour of total, intrigue, blessing for me. And I hope that we're both in a better place that tomorrow, because if we don't have today lived to its fullest, why do we need tomorrow?
Right.
And
Right.
and I think this is a beautiful concept. So I want to thank you, Eric, for joining me on this an hour of bliss. And I hope you enjoyed yourself as much as I did.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I appreciate the opportunity. I love these conversations. These are life-giving to me. And my intention is that it's life-giving to at least one person who's listening to this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So please stay on after I say goodbye, because there's so much more to just want to just leave with you. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining us on Hard Talk. Eric and I have enjoyed your company. Please subscribe, share, scream, shout. Doesn't matter. The whole world needs to know that you got two individuals here who care about you. And the greatest joy in life is to be successful. And for me, success is not about all the accolades that you get, but it's whether when your children become adults and they want to spend time with you. And I think that's the keynote for success. So once again, do join in again, and once visit my website, mindflowergonomics.com. And there you will learn more. And Eric, how do we get in touch with you? Where do people find out this source of rejuvenation?
Yeah, I'm LinkedIn is my social media of choice, and I've recently updated my website. You can find me at lifebydesign.me, and or send me an email at eric@lifebydesign.me. And yeah, would love to connect. Would love to have chats like this more often.
And and that's how I found Eric, because on LinkedIn, every time I did a post, there was this face that has a reaction to it. And I thought, wow, somebody has dropped in. And that's how and you got to really respect, isn't it? Whenever somebody reacts to something that you have
Yeah.
posted or written, it's a powerful reminder that you're not alone and that someone else sees life with you. So on that note, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk again.